Roughly 24 people in the world now control as much wealth as half the world's population. The gap between rich and poor all across the globe getting bigger. The anti-poverty nonprofit Oxfam is out with new info about that.
The news comes as leaders meet in Davos, Switzerland for a major economic forum. Paul O'Brien is the campaign director for Oxfam, and he talked about why the wealth gap is growing.
Basically, because trickle-down economics isn't working for them. They are not getting the benefits of economic growth. They were last year staying flat, and now they're falling further behind. That's the product of the global and national economies we have today.
Speaking with CBS News, O'Brien talked about the real human cost of this.
Today, 262 million children will stay at home because their governments don't have the funding to put them into school. 10,000 people will die of basic healthcare problems because their healthcare systems don't have the funding. Women will spend about 16 billion hours today in unpaid care work because we're not investing in the public services, in the water, electricity, childcare systems that allows them to use their time more productively. So they are paying the price for the fact that our world is becoming increasingly unequal.
And he says there are plenty of people suffering here at home.
Even here in the United States, people are working harder and harder for less, or to stay just where they are. And when you don't have a tax system that is actually going after the height of wealth, the most extreme levels of wealth, then you're going to see people falling further and further behind because simply the Treasury doesn't have the resources it needs to help people lift themselves from poverty.
O'Brien argues that policymakers all across the world should dramatically reform the way wealthy people are taxed. He says the next challenge after that is to make sure that new tax revenue is used to help people lift themselves out of poverty.
O'Brien says even billionaires themselves, the ones in Davos, are taking notice.
A lot of people very surprisingly care about this trend. Many of the people who are in Davos now who've been the beneficiaries of this unregulated system care about this trend. The International Monetary Fund, which used to argue precisely the opposite, is saying if we want to sustain growth rates around the world, we're going to actually have to tackle extreme inequality, because unless you redistribute some income so that the economies are filled with better educated and healthy people, you're not going to get growth.
Of course, there's always the threat of people in poverty taking matters into their own hands.